All right, we're going to go ahead and get going here. Thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Sage Pacheco. I am the Marketing and Customer Experience Specialist here at WiseCon. Thank you all for attending our webinar here today. We are going to be talking about the C1 filter flushing control that is now being or soon to be released from WiseCon on Drop Control. Today we have our operations manager, Michael Espinoza, as our special guest. He will be going over all of the features having to do with the C1 filter flushing. This has been a highly anticipated release at WiseCon, so we are happy and excited to give you guys some more information regarding this release. So basically, I'll go through kind of what drop control is, what WiseCon does, per usual during our webinars, and then I will go ahead and let Michael give the spiel on the C1 filter flushing. After his presentation, we will do a brief Q&A. So at any point, if you have any questions regarding anything we're asking here, you can go ahead and type them in the Q&A box down at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And then we'll go ahead and get to those during the last 10 or 15 minutes of the webinar. If at any point you're having trouble hearing us or seeing our screens, go ahead and just send a chat in the chat box. That would be very helpful. And then after the webinar is concluded, we're going to go ahead and process that recording and post it on our social media channels and YouTube. So you're able to access this after the webinar as well. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Today, talking about the C1 filter flushing control featuring Michael. This is the first fully cloud-based filter flushing control feature in the market. So getting started about WiseCon, what we do here and what drop control is. WiseCon was founded in Chile in 2006. We are a high-tech irrigation management company. We have been in California since 2015. We are a Chilean-based company serving over 300,000 acres and deployed over 10,000 nodes. In California, we have 15 distributors alone. We work in a dealer network, and we have 20 dealers and distributors throughout the entire United States. We have distributors throughout California, Pacific Northwest, and the Southeast United States. We have over 3,000 users in 5 countries, including Argentina, Chile, US, Peru, and Mexico, and we are very much so growing. We have a fully staffed support team and warehouse in Fresno, always able for calls and emails for any questions or troubles out in the field. We have 7 API integrations as well as an open API, so we can connect with any other company that also has an open API in order to share data, to better analyze and support our growers' needs, which is what we're focused on always here at WiseCon. So what is drop control? We are an online irrigation management system. We refer to this diagram here a lot here at WiseCon. We like to refer to drop control as the remote control of your system or your operation. So drop control is a reliable irrigation monitoring and control system. We pride ourselves in being the forefront of the automation industry. Automation irrigation is what we specialize in. It's our bread and butter. However, we definitely have our hands in many other telemetry aspects as well. The first feature of our control system is going to be pump start stop. This is a really good visual about exactly pretty much everything we can do at a basic filter station or a pump, which is what Michael will also be talking about here as well. Pump start stop, as well as wireless valve control, valve operation feedback. We specialize in fertilizer injection and scheduling control as well, EC monitoring, acid injection, all that good stuff. Soil moisture monitoring. We definitely can read pretty much any soil moisture sensor you have out in your field that also has that open API. We can just ping that into our drop control platform and able to see your readings at any time. Weather monitoring is also big here at WiseCon. So we distribute Davis weather stations, but if you have any on-site weather station or a local SUMA station, for example, you're able to also tie those into your drop control dashboard. We also connect with plant sensors. So any company such as Phytech or another plant sensor you may have, we're able to tie that into drop control for you to see those readings on drop control as well. We are comprised of hardware and software. Going to some of our hardware. Starting with our X1 node, this is our flagship node. It's definitely the most popular. It's our monitoring and control node. Next, we have our M1 on the right-hand side. This is our soil monitoring unit. So monitoring soil moisture probes, weather sensors, plant sensors, whatever you want to monitor, you can do with our M1 node. It can also operate as its own radio unit. And then we have our C1. So talking about that C1 today, it has a little bit different look now. This is our pump filter station control node. So it can start and stop 5 different pumps and 10 different valves, as well as fertilizer pumps and acid injections. Here is a look of what it would look like out in the field. So we're getting readings from our node. Everything's going into the cloud, saving in our Wisecon server and executing in the field. Going into our software. So we have our mobile app available on Apple and Android, as well as our desktop availability on Drop Control as well, which you can schedule, monitor, whatever you need to do out in the field, at home, in your office, you're able to do on either our app or our desktop. Moving into the desktop version of our software. So this is what your Drop Control account or dashboard would look like when you are configuring your ranch. So we do a node layout of an overview of all of the coordinates of your ranch. We use a Google Earth KMZ file to create this, and we pinpoint the exact locations of each node on your ranch, as well as which sensors are tied into each of those nodes. Our start-stop scheduler on Drop Control, it's very easy to use. You're able to start and stop any pump that's currently running. If you need to stop an irrigation that's happening, you're able to do so and then activate it to continue out its cycle. And this is what your 24-hour Gantt chart would show on your scheduler. So you can see what's being scheduled and what's being executed. Our scheduler, like I mentioned, is very user-friendly. So you have a few different options. You're able to schedule one zone at a time, a group of zones if you want to do that as well. And then also using templates and programs, which I will also get to in the next slide, and able to start an irrigation immediately, which is immediate irrigation. You're able to start one within 4 to 5 minutes of sending it to the node. This is what your scheduler would look like on Drop Control desktop. So you're able to schedule an irrigation using end date and time, volume, or by duration. You're also able to configure fertigation within your scheduled irrigations and also configure acid or pH control. Programs and templates, as I mentioned. So this is useful if you want to run the same set, let's say for a week or a month. You're able to create first a template and then configure that to a program to run for however long you need that to run. Operation feedback. This is useful to be able to see what is actually happening out during your set or in the field. So you can see that top lighter blue bar is showing us what was scheduled, and then you're always able to see what actually happened out in the field if you have that hardware configured to be able to see flow, volume, when it started, when it ended, and the flow difference as well. Daily view. So this is your view for the day. You're able to see which blocks are scheduled, have scheduled irrigations, and for how long. In this example, we have some fertigation attached to it. So that's why it's in that green color. So at the top, we see what's scheduled, and below we'd see what actually happened within the day. Weekly view. So we're able to see what's scheduled for the entire week and what actually happened. Manual operation. So we're able to see what's happening in the field, even if you don't schedule anything on Drop Control. So you can see here in those gold yellow bars, Using pressure switches out in the field, we're able to see how much volume or the duration of an irrigation, even though we didn't schedule on drop control. So if you still are running in manual. Peak hour mode, this is a very helpful feature, especially in those hot summer months when peak hour is really important. And this peach color highlighted down all of the blocks going vertical, we're able to see the highlighted peak hours in which you maybe want not to impose in. Another feature we have is if you are scheduling an irrigation and it's going to impose during a peak hour, drop control will give you an alert before it's scheduled saying, hey, you're imposing with the peak hour. Would you like to continue or would you like to edit? And these peak hours are also always able to edit with changing peak hours in different areas or different days of the week. You're able to edit the hours in which those will reflect each day. Flow meter readings. So this is using a chart on drop control called custom charts, another helpful feature. So we're able to see weekly accumulated volume, also showing us accumulated volume, and green readings are showing us flow meter readings for each irrigation event. Pressure readings. So we're able to see pressure. This is showing us for 3 different blocks. It looks like we're seeing pressure readings. Soil moisture readings, as mentioned before, we do a lot with soil moisture readings out in the field using soil moisture probes or sensors. This is showing us our readings for 3 different depths up at the top. Looks like 6 inches, 10 inches, and 14 inches. You can see the activity going through there. And then in the middle chart here, this is adding all of our soil moisture for those 3 depths or 3 sensors, adding it together so it's kind of able to see trends. So if you want to see trends that's happening with each irrigation event, you're able to see there. And you're also able to set a maximum and minimum that will either alert you when you're imposing with those thresholds, or it's just a visual here on the chart. Hey, you're getting a little too dry or a little too wet. And then below, you can see that is also configured with either running irrigations in the dark blue, or maybe rainfall in the light blue, and then as well as ET. Weather readings. So this is using an on-site weather station, or as mentioned before, if you have a local station that you want to configure to drop control. We're seeing temperature readings in the orange and relative humidity in the blue. And then we're seeing relative ET and rainfall below as well. Frost protection. So this is another helpful feature on drop control. You're able to set minimum and maximum temperatures to make sure that you're not imposing with a possible frost event. We also can set an alarm through our support team to configure an action to happen, whether kick on a pump, kick on fans, sprinklers, whatever you may be. We're able to set an alarm to initiate an action when you're imposing with a possible frost event as well. So not only alert you to your phone or email, but also start an action. And then we have relative ET as well below. Disease and weather models. So you're able to monitor chill hours throughout a season or throughout a month. And as mentioned, alerts and alarms. So you can configure an alert for pretty much any action. So whether it be if you're getting too wet or too dry using your soil moisture sensors, or it's getting too hot using your weather station, or your pressure is too high or too low through an irrigation, it will either send you an alert if you configure that either by SMS, phone call, or robocall to anyone on your account, as well as you can also initiate an alarm that will, again, kick on an irrigation event or an action to happen in the field. So that is the gist of the drop control platforms, software and hardware wise. I am now going to introduce Michael, our operations manager here at WiseCon, to start going over the C1 filter flushing feature, and any questions you guys may have about that, go ahead and just shoot them in our Q&A box and we will get to them after the webinar.
So we're going to talk today about the new release we're going to have with our C1 control unit, which is going to be dedicated to the flushing control. And this is going to be the first fully cloud-based solution we're going to have in the market. And as you already saw with Sage before, or you're aware of our solution, we're already capable of monitoring multiple sensors throughout the field. We already can monitor temperature, humidity, weather station, soil moisture probes, different types or plant sensors. And besides the monitoring capabilities, we already have the automation of the irrigation units, meaning that we can control different irrigation valves, irrigation pumps, fertigation pumps, etc. And all these devices or controllers are already communicating with the cloud through internet. So we can either monitor the sensor information through our computer, tablet, or cell phone, and we can also have control over them. So our main focus lately is being that we do have the C1 as the main control unit in every single filter station. That's the main purpose or the main aim whenever it got developed. And one of the reasons is with the same control unit, we are already capable of monitoring the ground to water level in the well. You can control any pump start and stop. You can monitor the pressure downstream the pump. And in case of a well, by having the ground to water level measurements, combining that with the pressure outlet of the pump, and if you're capable to monitor the power consumption of the pump, you can calculate the OPE or the overall pump efficiency in order to keep track of the pump performance. And besides all these operations, you can also monitor the reservoir level. You can control the filling process of the reservoir. You are capable of controlling the different fertilizer injection system that you may have, and also monitor the flow readings from your main irrigation system. So when you have one controller that is already capable of doing all those functions, the natural question will be, what's next? And for us, it was including the filter flush. So that way we can have one controller that does it all, and not having two different boxes in the field, one that is only going to be doing the flushing control and the other that is going to take care about everything else related to the automation. And besides asking yourself of what's next as of control, you also need to ask, how are we going to make this solution different from the others? And in our end, it came on being able or capable of controlling and adjusting everything online. That's why we enforce or mention that this is the first fully cloud-based solution in the market. So in order to be able to control all the components, we do have our main RF C1 controller unit that already comes with multiple outputs to control different devices, such as pumps or valves. It has multiple digital inputs to read flow meters or any on-off signal. It has 4 to 20 milliamp inputs for level transducers, pressure transducers, pH, EC, etc. It has 2 serial inputs in order to read different BFD variables or energy meters if you would like to keep track of all the electrical variables. And the same controller is already capable of having radio, cellular, or Bluetooth communication for different integrations, which we can cover a little bit more in a bit. You can add into the same controller multiple inputs and outputs in order to fit the different needs or devices that needs to be controlled in the field. And for the flushing in particular, we are capable of controlling those cycle or that control with multiple type of sensors. We can use the regular pressure differential switch, which most of the people or a lot of people will use the Murphy switch. You can use a pressure transducer, which is basically having a pressure reading before the filter, one after the filter, and the controller will be calculating the pressure differential that we are going to use to trigger a flashing cycle. Or you can have a pressure differential transducer that is going to immediately give you that difference. So how does it work? This solution is enabled for any sand, mesh, or disk filter and is compatible with all the brands in the market. We can adjust the flashing time. When we talk about the flashing time is for how long each tank will be flashing itself. So you can adjust this from 10 seconds all the way to 10 minutes. You can have one bulb per tank or one solenoid per filter tank. You are capable of skipping a tank if necessary. So if you have a filter station that has 6 tanks and one of them needs to go under maintenance, you can change at any time through the website or the mobile app to do not flash filter tank 5. So you can disable or enable which tanks will be part of the flashing cycle at any moment. The type of valves we are operating on the flashing feature is going to be a pressure sustained, normally open valve. And with the same controller, you can have any sort of combination of up to 70 inputs or outputs. What makes it different? That all the different parameters that are part of the flashing feature can be configurable online through the web browser or the mobile app, meaning that you can change the flashing cycles based on the water quality. We are going to cover some of the parameters that you are capable of modifying remotely, which makes everything a lot easier on the operation side of things. The flashing could be triggered in 3 different modes. It could be by time, meaning that you can run a flashing cycle every 2 hours, every 4 hours, 6, 10, 12, whatever you desire. It could be triggered by the pressure differential, which we will need a sensor to do so. So you can have the typical pressure transducers before and after calculating the differential to trigger the cycle. You can have a Murphy switch, as we mentioned before, or you can have a specific pressure differential transducer. You can have them all if you want. So in case you want to have a backup plan, you can have more than one sensor connected, and then at any moment, we can swap or switch which sensor is going to be the reference to trigger the flash cycle. Or you can trigger any cycle manually. And whenever we reference manually, it's not only locally at the site, you can manually start it remotely. So the trigger method is also changed automatically when a failure is detected. So we have heard from multiple growers, or one of the main complaints about actual solutions with the flashing is that any time that the pressure differential switch was or gets bad, the system will be flashing continuously. And if no one goes to the field, they won't notice it and they won't be able to do a corrective action. The main idea on our system or our controller is that you can set up a parameter that is going to allow you to decide how many continuous cycles will need to run before we trigger the safety feature. Meaning, for example, that you can say if my flashing is run 3 times due to my pressure readings, then I want to stop flashing and only run by time or manually, because that's a high indicator that my sensor is not working properly. You have the optional feature of automatically stopping the fertilizer pump when running a flushing cycle. And in order to have this feature, obviously the fertilizer pump must be controlled by the C1. And with the same box or the same controller, you're also capable to control flushing on 5 different filter stations. So if you have in the same location multiple filter stations or multiple pump stations that are irrigating different portions of a farm, you are basically capable of controlling all of those with one box. Going a little bit to the visualization of the information, I'm going to cover what you're capable to see through the web browser, what you're capable to see through the mobile app, and also to a new accessory that we added to the C1, which is a screen. Through the web browser, if you are in our main irrigation planning tool or irrigation chart, there will be a new section that is only for flushing. So if you have multiple systems or filter stations that you are controlling through our solution, you will have all of them listed in here. You will see their name, which pump system or filter station they are a part of, if there is any special configuration on them, and you will have actions. On the actions, you can manually start a flushing cycle. When we do reference to a cycle, is the process of flushing your tank number 1 all the way to the last tank in the list. So if you have 6 tanks, is flushing from the first one to the number 6. You can disable the flashing feature. So in case you detected an emergency or you are under an ongoing maintenance, you can disable momentarily the flashing feature, and then you can re-enable it back whenever you want. And finally, if there is any cycle or flashing running at the moment in the field, you can stop it remotely. Besides the actions, you also have advanced settings, which we are going to cover in the next slide. And finally, in your main irrigation scheduling chart, besides of seeing all the different irrigations that you have scheduled and seeing what's being executed, you will see the different flushing events throughout this time. So every single one of these bars represent a cycle, and also each cycle, it has more information that specifies when the flushing started, when ended, the specific duration of the cycle, or how long it took from flushing the first tank all the way to the last tank of the filter system, and then the type or what triggered the flushing, either if it's by time, a pressure event, a manual flush, or test. So we can register every single time somebody's testing the flushing feature in the field. As of the different settings that you are able to modify, you can select the operation mode. So you can run only by time, only by pressure, only manually, or you can have all of them enabled, or any sort of combination. So you can have only pressure and manual and disable time if you want, or you can create your own custom configuration. I'm not going to go over every single parameter, but basically you're able to control the timing on your operation for how often do you want to flush, for how long each tank or filter must be flushing. If you do have pressure readings, what's going to be the pressure differential that's going to trigger the flushing cycle. If you have multiple tanks, you can enable or disable which tanks will be part of the flushing cycle. And in case you are controlling the fertigation, you can decide if you want to stop fertigating or not. Anytime that a parameter is changed, is going to be applied on the next cycle. So if the system is actually flushing and you change multiple parameters and you click on the save button, the actual flushing cycle won't be modified. So once the cycle ends, all these new parameters will take place for the next cycle. Also, under the web browser visualization, under each irrigation event, you are going to be able to see the different sensors associated. So in this case, these blue and green lines are making reference to our pressure before the filter and our pressure after the filter. And the orange background color is making reference to the different flashing events. So we do know that during this irrigation, we had a total of 4 different events, and also we can see the behavior of the pressure transducers or the pressure readings throughout these events, how the difference in between the pressure and before got higher, which triggered the flashing, and how they got normalized after the flashing. And finally, as a summary, we do have the total amount of events during this irrigation and what triggered them. In this case, we got a total of 4 flashing cycles, and all of them were triggered by pressure or pressure differential. Moving from the web browser version into the mobile app, the mobile app is also capable of displaying through this icon that is representing the flashing a second view where will allow you to have interaction with the unit. So you're going to be able to also disable any flashing features. You can trigger a manual flashing, so you don't need to be next to the site. You could be wherever and activate this remotely as soon as you have cellular connectivity in your phone. And obviously the RFC1 controller also has cellular connectivity in the field. You can also modify the different settings, and you can see when was the previous cycle and how it got triggered. In this case, it has the date and time, and that it got triggered by time or frequency. And on the settings, the same parameters or operation modes that you're capable to control on the web browser, you can do it through the mobile app. And finally, one of the latest additions as of the hardware is including a screen that is going to allow you to interact with the unit through some buttons. So you will be able to navigate through the back flashing. You're going to be able to disable which tank is going to be part of the flashing cycle. You are going to be able to run a manual cycle, or you can run a test cycle whenever you are trying to identify timings or making sure that everything is working properly or not, besides of getting feedback from the different statuses. So on this particular view on the status, this drop represents that you are currently irrigating. So that means the controller detected that you're irrigating, not necessarily that you schedule an irrigation. Even if you are manually irrigating or not irrigating through the controller, we are still capable of detecting that activity in order to start the flashing features. This symbol represents that we are currently under a flashing cycle that got triggered manually. And that manually could be through the web browser, through the mobile app, or even through the screen or unit itself. You will have the information on when was the last cycle that you ran, how it got triggered, how many cycles have been executed on the current irrigation. In case you are running a flashing cycle, which filter is currently active, besides of checking all the measurements from your pressure transducers. What's the pressure before the filter, after the filter, and what's the difference in between them. So as a summary of the different features that we are capable to have with the C1 is a 100% cloud-based product that has cellular communication in order to send or receive information from the cloud. It has radio communication to be able to control different valves wirelessly. And it also has Bluetooth communication in order to have control through your phone. It's capable of doing the filter flushing, is capable of doing all the irrigation control or automation, the fertigation control. You can have valve operation, which they can be wired to the unit, or they could be wirelessly controlled through radio communication. It has Modbus communication with smart pumps and VFDs. We are always open for sensor integrations on soil moisture probes, weather stations, plant sensors, any sort of wells or reservoir monitoring. And we also have an open API for third-party companies that they can do irrigation recommendation, or they can even automate the irrigation through our technology.
All right, thank you, Michael. All right, we will go ahead and get into the Q&A now. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop those in the Q&A box. There is Michael's contact information as well, if you wanted to contact him after the webinar with any more questions. Michael, I do have one question here. Do you need internet connection to have the filter flushing capabilities on the C1?
No, so the filter flushing is capable to run as a standalone system, meaning that you don't need any sort of internet connection. So the system is going to be capable of operating all the flushing features, but without the cellular connectivity, you won't be able to adjust or have remote control over the unit.
Okay, thank you. All right. Another one we have is, are you able to retrofit or replace an old C1 to have the flushing capabilities?
Yes, you can. One of the main requirements is switching the actual lead with the screen. That's going to enable the flushing features.
Oh, it's easy enough. Any other questions? Like I mentioned before, the webinar will be recorded and posted on social and YouTube as well, so you're able to watch this afterwards.
We got another question. It says, working with latching solenoid have a battery fed? Yes, that's also possible. We do have relay outputs and latching outputs for those latching solenoids. So eventually the C1 could be running all the flushing without power needs.
All right, any more questions? Well, we will go ahead and hang on for a couple more minutes to let some more questions flow in if you have them. If not, thank you guys so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Michael, do we have a dealer in Italy?
We are working on expanding into Europe. So we are opening and talking with different dealers in France, Italy, Turkey, and we already have people in Australia. So coming soon.